Hi everyone, welcome to another video. Today we're gonna paint a realistic roach and we're gonna use a dry brush and some washes for that. And we're starting right now. Right, first of all, we're going to start with a white base coat. Here I'm using opaque paint because that's gonna cover way better than any kind of transparent paint. So here we're using Createx Opaque White, and I always mix a little bit of 4050 and 4011 with my paint, and that is to make it adhere better and spray easier. For the next step, we're gonna spray a little bit of pearl white all over our lure. Now we're gonna layer a lot of colors on there later, but some of that pearl is going to shine through eventually when we clear coat our lure. Now we're gonna apply our first wash. This is a wash from Vallejo in the color black. And with this we're gonna apply our darkest tones already, because we're gonna layer a few colors of paint over there, so that black will be far away in the background and it will just give subtle shadows and nuances. Notice that I stipple on the wash and I do not paint with my brush, or let's say I am not using any strokes with my brush. I am just simply stippling it on there, and that is because this will give a lot more of a texturized feeling, and this way you're not gonna see any brush strokes either. For example, the back of this lure is totally flat and has no texture in it, so by stippling we're gonna add a little bit of texture and depth there, and it's gonna look more natural instead of using brush strokes. Now I'm still using that same wash, Vallejo model wash in the color black, and that is to make that back a little darker and already create more definition between the scales too on the back. Now you can already see that this black wash is building up in between those scales, which gives a lot more contrast and therefore gives a lot of depth to our scales. Now I am using a Vallejo model wash dark green, which is actually not that really dark if you apply it on white. And now I'm going over all those black areas, and later I'm gonna do the entire body with that wash, so that all the scales will have a green tone to them and will have a nice dark nuance in between the cracks and crevices. Right, and now I am spraying a little bit of Vallejo Dead White onto the belly, and this is to fade out that green that we created on the belly that is a little bit too dark, because the belly of a roach is very white. So now we're giving that belly a white color that is fading out. Next up, we're gonna do the first layer of dry brushing, and I'm gonna use Vallejo Game Color for this because it's a little thicker, and for dry brushing we want the paint to be as thick as possible. It's gonna make it a lot easier. Now it's very important that the brush is dry when you use it, and that there is as less paint as possible on that brush. So grab a piece of paper towel next to you and rub out most of the paint on that paper towel, so there is almost nothing left on your brush, and that's how you're gonna dry brush, with as little paint as possible. Now don't apply too much pressure, or else you will be painting in between the cracks and crevices. And the special thing about dry brushing is that you are actually painting everything that is sticking out a little, the exterior part of the texture. So in this case that means that we are dry brushing the tip of our scales and not the cracks in between. So that will give us that green effect from the wash in between the scales, and with the dry brush we're making these scales, or at least the tip of the scales, a little bit white again. Now I am doing the same thing with metallic white coarse. This is a really nice glittery white with large metallic pigments, and that really gives a nice shine to your lure and gives a really scale flashing like effect. It's a really nice paint to use. And now we're gonna dry brush this on our scales just like we did on the white, so that white that we dry brushed on there gets that metallic scale effect, so it feels more like a fish scale. And we're gonna do the same thing with a little bit of pearl silver, just to give it a little bit of a silver shine here and there on those scales as well, just like a real roach has. Because we dry brushed so many colors on there, a little bit of the green in between the scales got lost. So that's why we're applying another wash on top of those scales again, so that we give them a little bit color in between the crevices again. And now I'm gonna dry brush a little bit of pearl white back on that wash that we just did to push it back into the background. I want that back to be a little darker, so I'm gonna take another olive green wash here. And olive green is actually darker than the dark green wash from Vallejo. And with that olive green, I am darkening that back a little bit. And by using this darker wash, we're really creating a nice texturized distinction between the side and the top of the fish. And some roaches have a little bit of a bluish kind of shine on their scales, which is really nice. So I am taking a little bit of Wicked Pearl Bright Blue, which is a really nice and bright blue pearlescent pigment, and I'm gonna dry brush a little bit of that onto my scales. And now to finish everything off, I am gonna dry brush a little bit of Vallejo the shifters on there in the color Electric Blue to Intense Violet, which is one of my favorite color shifts. You can use this on any darker surface and then it will shine through. So even on this darker green, you will get that nice color shift on there. For the fine details in the head and on the gill plates, I'm gonna use a fine tipped brush, and I'm just gonna apply a little bit of a dark brown wash in between those cracks. Now it is no problem if you miss or you mess around a little bit, because we're gonna cover that later with different paints. So it is gonna be more in the background, but it's gonna give a little bit of a shadow and it's gonna give the head more definition. And we're gonna give the fins also a normal dark brown wash, and that's actually enough to give it a more natural color. And now that all the detailing with the brown wash is done, we're gonna cover that a little bit more with a pearlescent white, and that's to push that back into the background so it's not that visible anymore and it looks more realistic. And after the pearl white, I also like to cover it with a little bit of metallic coarse white, just to give it a little bit more glitter in there. And of course, our roach wouldn't be finished if we didn't make the head a little bit more green, so I am using quite some reducer here, about 3 drops, and that mixed with only 1 drop of paint, so that our paint is highly reduced, and that's gonna make it very transparent. And with that transparent paint, we're simply gonna make the head a little bit more green and make all those green colors connect a little bit better. And now as a finishing touch, I'm gonna use that same color shift and I'm gonna shoot it on the back. Now it's very important that you don't layer this color too thick, because if you layer it on too thick, you will not see any of that green anymore, and we want that green to shine through underneath that pearlescent that we're putting on there right now. I'm also gonna do it on the gill plates, and whenever that hits the light, it's gonna turn a little bit blue in between those white pigments. I almost forgot. Of course, a roach has this orange fin on the underside, so I'm gonna use a little bit of Vallejo Hot Orange, which is a very nice and transparent color, and we're simply gonna paint that fin a little bit more orange now. Now it's time to put the eyes on, and because a roach has these orange-red eyes, I'm gonna mix a little bit of 40-50 with some Candy 2O Grabber Orange and make the eyes orange, and then I'm gonna make the top of the eyes red with a little bit of Candy 2O Blood Red also mixed with 40-50. And then our lure is finished. Alright guys, our lure is finished, and as you can see, those washes stayed really nice into the background, and that's because we layered a color of paint always on top of those washes. By dry brushing the tips of the scales, we make them lighter again with the white, and that really makes every scale stick out again. give a really natural feel to the eye. And then the color shift on the back really just finishes this lure. As always, I will leave a link in the description below for all the materials that I used. This will guide you to my web shop, which is based in Sweden. And if you would buy anything there, you will be supporting me and the channel. If you got any questions regarding dry brushing or washes or anything else regarding lure painting, let me know in the comments down below. And as always, thank you for watching, have a nice day and see you next time. Bye bye!